In this video, I am going to share with you certain tricks that I generally tell my students to score high in the written task of IELTS. On the day you write IELTS examination, the written section would be the third section. The whole duration that will be given to you would be 60 minutes. But the point is, the paper that will be given to you, if you are going for academic side, is different from what will happen if you are writing your general IELTS examination. Now in this video, I am going to be focusing on the academic side of it, though the principles that I am going to be talking about are very similar and therefore can be adopted even for someone who is writing a general IELTS test too. Having said that, I'll quickly like to talk about the fact that there are two questions that you will be given in each of these sections, and the second question in both academic and general is very similar. Though of course, the topic that is given in the general IELTS test is much simpler than that will be given in the academic test. Having said that, what are the few advices I would like you to have so as to reach the goal of higher score in the written task of IELTS? The first and the foremost is, of course, maintain legible handwriting. Now, of late, we are so much used to mobile typing and computer typing that we have lost the power over pen. And today, most of our handwriting is more like a doctor's handwriting, not legible. The fact of the matter is, majority of you are going to write a paper-based test. Yes, computer-based test has now been introduced, but it's still not very popular. And therefore, when the evaluator takes your essay to read, he or she should be able to read it and then only give you good marks that you deserve. So that would be my first major advice. If you were to look at the paper overall, as I said, there are going to be two tasks that are going to be given. The whole duration is 60 minutes. No one is going to tell you as to how to divide that between the two tasks. But the first task is shorter than the second task. So my recommendation to you would be to see to it that you're completing the first task in 20 minutes so that you have 40 whole minutes to concentrate on the second task, which of course is much more challenging than the first task. I often tell my students that the first task can be cracked very fast, and that therefore should be your method of scoring high in IELTS examination. The first task is more predictable. You will be basically given a picture. It can be a graph, combination of graphs, a life cycle, a flow. And what is that you are expected to do? You are expected to describe that in 150 words. This is where one more advice of mine comes into picture. The whole purpose of this exercise is for you to exhibit your command over written English. Therefore, see to it that you are not writing anything lesser than 150 words. In fact, try to exceed it a little more, go to about 170 to 180 words, not more than that, because to go more than that, you probably would have to invest more time. If you are not a person comfortable with writing, believe me, even writing 150 words will be a challenge, and therefore you need to practice. Now, one of the common mistakes people do in this task is to give extra information. Now, that is where you need to be very careful. This is a task where whatever has been given in the pictorial form, you're supposed to describe it. Now, during that time, nothing of your side of the story should come inside. Imagine it as if you are writing an essay, reading which a person who is visually challenged should be able to imagine what has been given in the picture. That's all. That is what this task is all about. Now, this is where I have further advice for you to take. Number one would be this. See to it that you are building a good structure, because structure will be given huge weightage. Structure will imply there have to be paragraphs and there has to be good connectors. It has to start with the introduction and it has to have a body. Because in this task you are not actually giving any of your views, it will not actually have any conclusion, though body can be multiple paragraphs. In fact, I would strongly suggest you to have at least 2 paragraphs as a body. Now, once that is done, the next exercise would basically be an essay where you are expected to take a stance. For example, the topic could be that government is spending a lot of money in setting up museums. Rather than spending money in setting up museums, it should set up probably schools. Do you agree or disagree quote examples. So you need to read the instruction very carefully and then express your views on that. Now this is where again you need to present this in a form of a body, a introduction and a conclusion, because here of course your views will be there. So what is that I am going to recommend you to do? One, of course, practice. Now of the two tasks, the first task is easier to score. Let us go back to the first task. Let us say you get a task where you have two graphs being given, one a line chart, the other a pie chart. Now, if you do not know what is a line chart, what is a pie chart, a bar chart, you are expected to know this, because as a person looking for education abroad, these are common things that will be a part of your curriculum. You are expected to know certain terms, certain keywords which we talk about, like trending up, like plateauing. Now these are terms that you will be able to find in any book, or even for that matter my videos on this area, which you can get access to through Condiro online platform. Now let us say you have been given two graphs, and how are you going to write 150 words and a little more, probably 170 words? How are you going to write an essay on that? The first thing of course should be an introduction. Now introduction should be necessarily there, and the easiest way to write an introduction is to rephrase whatever has been given as a question in your own language. It could be a simple sentence like two graphs which exhibit, and you can therefore talk about what they talk about. For example, one of the graphs could be the way the traffic changes over a daytime, and the second could be the number of cars that move past a road. So you are basically talking about the x-axis, the y-axis of the two graphs. And then of course in the next part, which is the body part, one paragraph could be on one graph, the second paragraph could be on the second graph. Better still, if you want to improve the marks, don't just look at the two graphs independently, look at them together to see if you can talk about commonalities. So instead of having two paragraphs where you talk about one on one graph and the second paragraph on the second graph, you can talk about the first paragraph of the body as the similarity between the two graphs and the second part as the where the two trends differ. So these mechanisms can be used to build a good essay. As I did say, please do make it a point to watch my videos on this to get little more insight as to how to write a good essay. The second task, where you are expected to give an opinion, is very important that you read the instruction very carefully. And then don't rush to write an essay. Take your time, come out with a structure, come out with few points. Between the first task and the second task is a little more challenging because it requires you to have some views. And of course, if your knowledge is vast and you do have examples to quote, your ability to build a good argument is stronger. And that is going to be a challenge, no doubt about it. So once you come out with a rough structure, it's only after that you will translate that into a good essay. And while doing so, all the good manners that you should have in terms of English, not using, for example, SMS language, not using bullet points. As students of science and maths, majority of us are so much used to bullet points that we have forgotten the art of connecting the points together using a good English connectors. Here, this is an English test. This is not a maths test. Remember that. Similarly, taking care of the fact that your spellings are more British oriented, because this is a British test for something which I'm sure you are aware of. These principles, if you were to take care of, believe me, you'll be easily be able to get 6.5, and after that, if you're a better writer, more than that, of course. Do feel free to use the Condiro online platform. Here, once your essay is submitted, the system uses artificial intelligence to evaluate it. Furthermore, even our experienced set of faculty members will evaluate and get back to you with feedback. How does the feedback help you? As I keep saying, and that has been my experience, most of you people do very typical mistakes. Yes, the type of mistakes one does is different from the mistakes the other do. But others, the beauty is, once you know the type of mistake you do, then you are a little more careful. And more importantly, if you also know the correction that has to be done, on that day, once you have written the essay, while you are reviewing it, and that is also something that you need to do, your eye will be able to catch those mistakes and then correct it. And this is where one more advice I have. When you are correcting it, do it in a legible way again. Nothing wrong in striking few words. Nothing wrong in writing something else to replace those words, but in a very legible way. Writing task is very essential. As a student of masters or even postgraduate diploma if you are going for, you are expected to write in quite a few sessions mini thesis or thesis. Therefore, written task is an important task. If you are already preparing for GRE and therefore you know the principles of analytical writing, you have a big advantage because the same principles that we talk about in GRE analytical writing have to be adopted here in IELTS. But the best way of getting a high score in IELTS within a short duration is by submitting the write-up, getting it corrected, taking the feedback and working on the feedback. So are 2 weeks more than sufficient? Answer is yes. In fact, in 2 weeks, even if you were to write one essay every day, you have 14 essays to help you understand your areas of focus and improvement. So go ahead, submit your essay today.